Why the USB-C laws are dumb. From 2025, all of your cable woes will be gone, and if you have a tablet, a phone, a digital camera, a set of headphones, a handheld game console, a portable speaker, an e-reader, a keyboard, a mouse, a satnav, a pair of wireless earbuds, or a laptop, if there's a hole for charging in it, you will be able to charge it with USB-C. What a paradise we'll be in, where hardware choices are now made by bureaucrats who barely understand the world we live in. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell. Now, to be clear, I am absolutely fine with USB-C on the iPhone. I'm also fine with Lightning. Both are fine. Both have advantages and disadvantages. Neither is objectively better, regardless of what you've heard. For example, Lightning is smaller. It is a single port, which means if lint gets in there, it's easier to clean out with a SIM ejector tool, which, by the way, is also a endangered species thanks to the American iPhone 14 models. It's easier for water to run out of it, and it dries quicker, as the thinner spaces around the fin in USB-C means that the surface tension is more of an issue. Apple even has a higher speed version of Lightning, which was used for the first iPad Pros before being quietly abandoned. USB-C, of course, however, is ubiquitous. It's already being adopted across a bunch of devices. It's faster, it can transmit more power, at least sometimes, and this is why USB-C might be a poor choice. Yes, the connector is the same. The cables, though, while all looking the same, have wildly different ratings and capacities for power delivery and also data transfer. The USB-C connector is used for Thunderbolt 3 and 4 as well. Do you think the general public know the difference? I'm pretty confused myself, and I talk about this every day on the internet. Plus, USB changes their names randomly at the drop of a hat. It's infuriating even for PC stands like Linus Tech tips, who love to complain that the iPhone has had a consistent port without change for just over a decade. And let's not forget, Apple were instrumental in designing the USB-C port. And of course, when it was put onto the single port MacBook, everyone hated the idea. I remember, while the Lightning port has been around for a decade, the decade is an important word here. When Phil Schiller introduced the Lightning connector with the iPhone 5, he said it is the connector for the next decade, and it's now been slightly more than a decade. Apple has introduced their new charging standard already. It's MagSafe. Apple Insider and a lot of other outlets have got something wrong here as well. Their headlines say, and I quote, that the iPhone must use USB-C by 2024. That is not true. First, its products sold from 2025, not by 2024. However, Apple also has MagSafe, and the only requirement is that charging accessories through a port use USB-C as the shape of that port. Apple could simply disable charging via Lightning on future iPhones and make MagSafe the way to charge, and they would be compliant with the law. But they won't. But they could. But they won't. Even if they did this only for handsets sold within the EU, people would find a way to re-enable that charge port through, I don't know, using a VPN when they updated it, of course. VPN companies, by the way, I'm open to sponsorship offers. Apple could, of course, make the iPhone portless. That adds a couple of advantages for Apple. For example, wireless charging over MagSafe is safe from issues when the iPhone is wet. You're not going to get those issues coming up on the screen where it says your Lightning port has water in it, so we can't charge through it at the moment. AirDrop also works fine and is faster than wired transfers for images and videos over Lightning, but that's kind of because Lightning is really slow. And of course, the image files and videos themselves have become pretty huge with ProRes video and ProRAW images, and now 48 megapixel sensors on the Pro iPhones. iCloud is even better though, so you don't have to actively transfer files from your phone at all. Simply grab the files created on your iPhone from iCloud on whatever PC or Mac you might need it on. And of course, MagSafe isn't just a charging method, but also a mounting, which makes wireless charging more efficient. The magnets perfectly align the coils so that the wireless charging is as good as it physically can be, and when you're not charging, it's just a great way to use a desk or car mount for your iPhone. But it can do both at the same time. The more worrying thing, however, for the EU getting involved in these hardware and technology choices is this: is it a slippery slope? The whole point of this legislation is to reduce the amount of e-waste from cables and chargers that only work for a single platform. In the US, however, the iPhone has more than a 50% market share, so if the United States decided that they should have a single charging standard, the logical choice would be Lightning. But why stop at just charging? We've got SD card readers on MacBook Pros and the Mac Studio, but USB-C is far faster for data transfer. Perhaps all cameras should have USB connected storage, as they'll already have a USB-C charging port. Graphics cards in PCs, I mean, they currently use PCI Express for a connection to a motherboard, but in the past graphics cards use AGP, and we've got external GPUs, eGPUs, that use a USB-C Thunderbolt connection. So maybe that should all be unified too, and USB-C is clearly the standard that graphics cards should all have to use. And I mean, while we're looking at motherboards, surely all these Molex connectors for the power supply should be the same. USB-C can transfer power, so of course that is what we should be using. And CPU sockets. For some reason AMD and Intel are allowed to have different CPU sockets, but we could unify that and standardize it for the next decade so that they have to use the same CPU sockets. Whether that's USB-C or not quite sure. RAM, I know at the moment we have different standards for laptops and desktops, but surely we could use USB-C for that as well. Surely there should just be a standard for everything. How is everyone else allowed to have their own standards for things, but Apple using the Lightning connector is making competition worse and, you know, all of this e-waste? I'm sure a cable is a lot more e-waste than a logic board. I do think we should just have a single slot for everyone to work with for RAM, CPUs, charging. The works, it makes sense. And why do TVs get to have HDMI ports when Thunderbolt, which uses the USB-C standard, can quite capably carry video and audio signals? That should be standardized. Why do TVs get to have HDMI? As well as the power into the TV, a lot of them have like connected cables. Surely we could just chuck in a USB-C cable. And I know that sometimes TVs use more than 100 watts of power, but they should probably cut their power usage because we need to reduce energy use, but also why not just use 2 USB-C cables? I'm sure there's a USB-C version that goes up to 220 watts anyway. I mean, some of the cables might catch fire, but they look the same, so I think it'll be fine. This slippery slope is what's known as a logical fallacy. It's where you take the consequences of an idea to the extreme, and in many cases it doesn't make any sense. But in this case, as many others have said before me, what happens when a better technology comes along? How many years does it take the huge ship EU to change course and embrace a better solution? How many years has this law been debated before they could come to a solution and actually get it through the European Parliament? And how deeply do those who make the decision actually understand the underlying technologies and how long that technology could be relevant? Please, don't misunderstand this video. I'm not against a single charging standard. I love the idea of taking a single cable to charge all of my devices while traveling, although sometimes I do want to charge more than one thing at the same time while I'm asleep, so is this actually a win? My concern is that a government of a single geographic area deciding what a standard is might not be the right solution. Now, I don't have the right solution, but I do think that data transfer side of things is unlikely to have anything to do with the energy in charging parts of a cable within the next 5 years. So far, everyone's argument has been that the iPhone doesn't transfer data fast enough, so we need to use USB-C. That doesn't really make any sense to me. Wireless data transfer is getting faster all the time, so what shape your cable happens to be is becoming far less relevant than it was years ago. I wish the UK was still a part of the EU, but I also wish that Europeans would keep their fingers out of my holes. I can't believe I just said that, but thanks Patreons for making that line possible. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell.